Welcome forward here with Consciously Creating Circumstances by George Winslow, Plummer. We're entering into chapter 14 entitled Fear and Faith. Some people feel that they understand the law perfectly as soon as their attention has been directed to it. They begin to practice it, and as soon as they begin, they also begin to nullify it by their doubts. It seems so simple at first that they begin to question, quote, "How is it possible to secure what I need merely by closing my eyes and speaking to myself?" End of quote. This is one question that arises. Quote, "I wonder if it is true, if it will work out for me just as I have been taught," end of quote, is another, and so on. When an individual begins to wonder or question a thought form's power in any way, he has only one thing to do, and that is to begin all over again, for he has sent out thoughts that have weakened or destroyed his brain children almost the moment they were born. These mental states of wonderment, hope, questioning, and similar conditions are all evident in an inner fundamental doubt, and doubt is fatal to success in any phase of activity. Doubt is a mild form of expressing something stronger and more dangerous, fear of failure. Quote, "Our doubts," quote unquote, as Shakespeare has it, quote, "are traitors and make us lose the good we oft might win by fearing to attempt it." End of quote. Maybe you are familiar with the following story, but in any event, it is apropos. A traveler met the Black Plague on the way to Baghdad. Quote, "Where are you going?" quote unquote, asked the traveler. Quote, "To Baghdad to slay 5,000. End of quote, said the plague. Later on, the traveler met the plague returning and said to it, quote, "You told me you were going to kill only 5,000, but I hear that 50,000 died." End of quote. Quote, "I told you truly," quote, end of quote, said the plague. Quote again, "I slew only 5,000. The other 45,000 were killed through fear." End of quote. Closer to our own time is the case of the preacher in North Carolina who allowed himself to be bitten by a rattlesnake, which is ordinarily fatal unless immediately treated. He recovered. He would have no physician. He said, according to the New York Times, quote, "Not for a moment have I lost my faith. I had faith in the Lord that He would take care of me." End of quote. And this preacher's sublime faith drew from the eminent scientists Dr. Ditmars, according to the credible press reports, the astonishing statement, quote, "I do not advise preachers or anyone else to follow the example this mountain man has set, but I will say that I respect this particular preacher's faith. I believe his faith and his general health will pull him through. Faith and the state of mind, I believe, have a good deal to do with this man's physical condition, and this man's religion has buoyed him up mentally." End of quote. Fear must be conquered before you can reasonably expect to attain real success in anything, and the conquest of fear may be one of the very best things you can ask first from the universal mind. All doubts must be eliminated, and you can start to accomplish this by forming a mental picture of yourself doing courageously and positively just the thing you are most fearful of. It will be a self-discipline that will stand you in a good stead for the rest of your lifetime. Many failures in this world, where the individual is apparently gifted with every working tool that destiny can furnish him, arise from this deep inner fearfulness, fear of criticism, fear of ridicule, fear of competition, fear of superior power, education, place, financial status. All these produce an inferiority complex that breaks down many a useful man or woman. There is an old scripture saying that, quote, no man liveth unto himself, quote unquote. That is true, will be seen in a moment's reflection. When you impress your thought form upon the universal mind, you must remember that because the universal mind is universal, it operates through all human individual minds. Therefore, your thought form is going to make a definite impression upon others. More than this, the fact that your thought form is going to be impressed upon other individual minds and that they are going to react to it according to their capacities for reception shows us that we do not live unto ourselves alone, but impress ourselves most potently among others and upon others for good or ill. It behooves us to make sure that it is for the good and not for ill. This impression is made upon others through the subjective mind and will manifest accordingly to the measure by which the subjective mind can react upon their objective mentalism. It shows the underlying unity that is the basic principle of all real concept of human brotherhood. So it is emphasized all through the subject of the mental science that you must make your thought forms constructive. Note well, not that such are the only kind that will ever work, but that the constructive thought forms are the only kind that will surely work to your ultimate advantage every time. And that is the only kind you are interested in. Do we by chance need any further proof that these principles are true? The testimony of many, our greatest souls, agreed with us. Let us turn to the great book where we find, quote, all things whoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing ye shall receive, end of quote. That's Matthew 21:12. The only stipulation is the seeker must believe that he shall receive what he seeks. Quote, whoever ye shall ask in my name, that will I do, end of quote. Note, in my name. In other words, constructively. And again, quote, if ye shall ask anything in my name, I will do it, end of quote. From John 14:13, verse 14. It is not notable that we are told to ask not once but many times throughout the scriptures. The admonition or privilege is not an obscure text, but one that is reiterated throughout the Christian teaching. Prior to Christianity, Buddha emphasized the same principle. He said, quote, good thoughts will produce good actions, and bad thoughts will produce bad actions. Hatred does not cease by hatred at any time. Hatred ceases by love. This is an old rule, end of quote. Here is the direct substantiation of the teaching that worthy thought forms tend to construct action and results. Also, that revengeful, thoughtful work only a continuation of the wrong mental attitude. The thought form that does not embody love or one's fellow being has no right to externalization. The knowledge of the wide difference in the application of the objective mind as applying to outer things and the subjective as applying to the inner is shown by Lao Tzu, the Chinese philosopher. Said he, quote, the sage attends to the inner and not to the outer. End of quote. In other words, as we say, he puts aside the objective and holds to the subjective when really important things are to be undertaken. As we might expect from his mathematical mode of expression, Pythagoras gives the law we have explained in the lines from his famous golden verse, quote, "For a most rigid law binds power to necessity," end of quote. Or, as we would put it, the whole power of the universal mind is at the disposal of man's necessity. There must, therefore, be a direct way in which it can be invoked, also by which it can react. Thought forms are the way. It is useless for anyone to undertake the practice of developing and impressing thought forms merely from the standpoint of experiment or to, quote, "see if the thing will work," end of quote. He must enter upon such an important undertaking only after he has satisfied himself completely that the law is logical, natural, practical, and excellent. Only a supreme confidence in one's relationship to the universal mind will beget results. Neither is the universal source of all supply amendable to the gimme, quote unquote, kind of prayers wherein the one who so prays is under the delusion that it is far more blessed to receive than to give. All requests made upon the universal should be formulated from the standpoint of becoming an instrument through which the universe can work in greater freedom of expression to reach the greater number of good. Do not get the idea that you're using something new and untried. The law of supply, through impressing the universal mind with your particular need, has been known for ages, but the vast majority of mankind has lost sight of it in their haste to secure their ends through what they considered visible, tangible means, relying in false pride upon what they call, quote, their own ability, end of quote. Well, our ability is so-called is simply the measure by which we utilize the vast power within us, whether we do so consciously or unconsciously. John Burroughs, whose life was an undoubted success and whose fine qualities made an immortal impression upon human consciousness, sums up the attitude required by the novice who seeks success through the individual at one-ment with the universal mind. He says, quote, "Serene I fold my hands and wait, nor care for wind, nor tide, nor sea. I have no more giants 'gainst time or fate, for lo, my own shall come to me." End of quote. In these beautiful lines, we find no attempt at limitation. The universal is not urged to produce results at a given time or place. There is no worry, anxiety, or mental distress. Instead, in the next verse, we find his full acquiescence with the whatsoever his environment imposes upon him. He says, quote, "I stay my haste, I make delays. For what avails this eager pace? I stand amid the eternal ways, and what is mine shall know my face." End of quote. And then, as though there were some deep inner victory, a sustaining sense of triumph over all earthly barriers, the poet sends out upon the ethers to all who would listen and shall in years come to revere these inspired lines that attain to sheer grandeur. Quote, "The stars come nightly to the sky, the tidal wave comes to the sea, nor time, nor space, nor deep, nor high can keep my own away from me." End of quote. Such ends chapter 14. The next chapter is entitled The Spirit of Your Thought.